Football is a game of if, buts and maybes, especially in the case of Portuguese giants Benfica. So how would they have looked today if they hadn't have sold some of their star players over the years, whether through ludicrous amounts of money being offered or just through poor judgment? Let's take a look. First off, and in goal, it's a really difficult decision. So ridiculous because they had two of the best goalkeepers in the world. Okay, granted they weren't the best goalkeepers in the world when they had them, but they've gone on to be, so if they had managed to hold on, they probably could have played both of them and they never would have conceded again. On the one hand, you've got Jan Oblak, who left Benfica and went to Atletico Madrid and has gone on to, rightly so, despite the fact he wasn't nominated in this year's Ballon d'Or, be classed as one of the best in the world. On the other hand, there's Ederson, played a season and a bit at Benfica before moving to Manchester City, and well, he's another top keeper. It's so difficult to choose between the two, but I've just gone for Jan Oblak on this one. You can have your say on this one though, and we're going to leave a little poll just around here so you guys can say who you'd rather have in net. So moving into the defence now, and at the left back spot, we've actually got someone who's still at Benfica, because I believe that if you compare him to all of the left backs they've had and sold in the last few years, he'd still be their number one choice. He joined Benfica in 2015 from Barcelona, and Alex Grimaldo since then has come on leaps and bounds. So much so that Arsenal interested him in the summer. Atletico Madrid were interested before they signed Renan Lodi to replace Felipe Luis, and former club Barcelona are apparently still keeping tabs on him when they eventually decide to replace Jordi Alba. So with all that said and done, Grimaldo would still be in the left back spot, but the right hand spot is a little bit more difficult. Much like with the Oblak and Ederson in goal, there have been two pretty good right backs who have gone on to much better things since leaving Benfica. That's no slight on Benfica, but now Nelson Semedo and Joao Cancelo are now at two of the biggest clubs in Europe. Semedo is slowly making the right back spot his own at Barcelona, although Sergio Roberto has something to say about that. And as for Joao Cancelo, well, he moved to Juventus, actually did quite well, but then got tempted in a move to join Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. He is currently fighting with Kyle Walker for the right back spot, but both of them are definitely fantastic fullbacks, and Benfica would probably love to have either of them. So with that said and done, we now move into the centre of defence, where much like Alex Grimaldo, we have one player who's still at Benfica now, and I think he'd do a better job than some of the players who have left. It's Ruben Dias. The Portugal centre-back has had a phenomenal last few years, so much so that his price tag looks to be up of £60 million right now. That is interesting, the likes of Manchester City and Manchester United, who have both had a few problems in the central defensive area in recent years. Along with this, it looks like Atletico Madrid are also interested in bringing in the centre-back. Maybe they can tempt him, having signed teammate Joao Felix, but we'll get onto him just a little bit later. As for who else they could have had in over the last few years, David Luiz is definitely up there after what he's gone on to achieve, and so is Ezekiel Garay, although I don't think either of them have got anything on Ruben Dias, what he could potentially become. That, alongside another central defender who left the club recently and is really showing himself to be a fantastic centre-half. That is Victor Lindelof. Now, say what you will about Manchester United's defensive problems, and it's not always easy under such pressure, but Lindelof has come out of such a troubled period looking pretty good. Eric Bailly is also kind of up there doing well in patches. Chris Smalling and Phil Jones definitely aren't. So with the signing of Harry Maguire, him and Lindelof have actually got a pretty solid partnership. Lindelof's 4 years in the Benfica first team saw him pick up a host of domestic trophies, and I think he'd strike up a pretty good partnership with Diaz at the back. So moving into the midfield now, and this is where we come up with a complete enigma and a midfield powerhouse. First off, it's Renato Sanchez. Now, leaving Benfica to sign for Bayern Munich for around 40 million euros just showed how much talent the then 18-year-old had. He was even named Golden Boy, which is given to the best teenager in world football. So you can imagine how a few years later, after not really succeeding at Bayern, that he needed to find a new place to call home. That wasn't back at Benfica, and he now finds himself at Lille in France, where he's struggling to get game time at the moment, but it looks as though they'll be breaking him in easily. At the time he was at Benfica, you can see why Bayern wanted to spend so much money. He was literally running the centre of the park at just 18 years old. He was a fantastic player, and if they still had him now, they'd probably have an absolute world beater on their hands. It's strange that the careers that a path can take players down, but alongside him, he could have had the perfect role model, one of the only players in the world who went to China and came back a better player at a higher level. Unbelievable. It's Axel Witsel. So here's how the story goes with Witsel. He was at Benfica, he then left to go to Zenit, he then left to go to China, and then came back to Dortmund in a better league for more money and as a better player. Now at 30 years old, he is proving himself in the Champions League stage to be an all-round, action-packed midfielder that pretty much any guy would love to have in their team. He's brilliant on the ball, off the ball, provides fantastic energy, and has kept out a few of the younger players at Dortmund, as well as being a really good role model to some of their young stars stars as well. Imagine a central midfield of him and Sanchez. I think Benfica really missed a trick with that one. Now, in some cases, like with Renato Sanchez, yes, maybe it's difficult to turn down so much money, especially for someone so young when they've only just developed him through the academy and they're basically making a ridiculous profit in a short amount of time. But when it comes to our next player, an attacking midfielder, Bernardo Silva, I really think that they had some poor levels of judgment. So he only played a hatful of games for Benfica, then went on loan to Monaco, then after a great season at Monaco, they then sold him permanently. He went to Monaco, as I said, had 2 good seasons, then went on to Manchester City and now has become one of the most consistent players in the Premier League and in Manchester City's team full of stars. I know it's a big if, but if Benfica had Bernardo Silva now, surely they'd be absolutely loving life. I mean, all the energy that he brings to the midfield, his quality going forward, he works hard defensively and his link-up play with everyone else around him is just absolutely ridiculous. This one, I'm chalking down to really poor judgment for Benfica. If they had him now anyway and they decided to sell him, they could probably get upwards of 80 million as well, which wouldn't be too bad financially. But they aren't doing so bad financially because of one other player who we're going to get onto in just a little bit. But first off, we've got the left-hand side of the attacking three, and it's Angel Di Maria. Now, much like Bernardo Silva, Angel Di Maria has this brilliant knack of playing the supporting role. At Real Madrid, he was fantastic. Man United, maybe we won't talk about so much. But even now at PSG, he's managing to do so well in a team full of massive egos. At Madrid, he played second role to the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo when it came to hogging the limelight. Now he's got to sit behind and watch Neymar and Mbappe steal all of it, but that doesn't really bother him. He is slowly but surely becoming one of the key components in the French champions side and is really showing his worth. At Benfica, he was such a talented player, which is obviously why Real Madrid parted so much money for him. At the time, 25 million was quite a fair amount for a young player from Portugal. So into the middle now, and this is the big superstar. Of course it is Joao Felix. Now, I know what you're going to say, Matt. You can say ifs and buts, but there's no way they were going to turn down the £100+ million. Of course not. I completely agree. But if they did still have Joao Felix, considering how well he did in his first and only full season at the club's first team, well, they'd be a pretty exciting side to watch in Europe. Joao Felix, as I mentioned, barely had a full year under his belt before Atletico Madrid came in, saw that he had Ballon d'Or potential, saw that he was going to be a world beater in the next 10 to 15 years, and swooped him up. This, to me, is completely warranted. Now, I know that so much money is often a slight distraction for a young player. Look at the likes of Ousmane Dembele. Well, in Joao Felix, I really think they've got a fantastic player on their hands. He can go on to be their kind of Cristiano Ronaldo figure, which is ironic because he's learning from him in training every time that Portugal meet up for a national game. But if they had him in this team, and considering everyone else that they've got around him, I'm going to put my neck on the line and say that Benfica would reach at least the semi-finals of the Champions League. And that's before we've even got to talk about the main goal scorer. So with this fantastic team behind us, we come to the last player. And that, of course, is the striking position where Benfica really lost out financially and they lost out on one hell of a good player. Here's the story. Benfica had Luka Jovic. They gave him on loan to Frankfurt and said, hey, at the end of the season, you can have him for 8 million. What happened during that season? He turned into a beast of a player at Frankfurt, even helped knocking Benfica out of the Europa League. He scored in the away game at Benfica, coincidentally the game where Joao Felix scored a hat-trick and became the youngest ever hat-trick scorer in the Europa League, and in the second leg helped his Frankfurt side with 2-0, meaning they went through on away goals. After that, Frankfurt said, hey, about that €8 million release clause, we're taking it. But once we've taken it, we're then going to go and sell him to Real Madrid for 60 million. So Benfica missed out on 60 million and having a decent player for a season, and that really has to go down to some poor judgment from the club. Alongside this, they could have also had Raul Jimenez, who's doing fantastic bits for Wolves in the Premier League, but again, there was a fair whack of money being placed on a 27-year-old, so you can kind of see why they did it. Not so much with a youngster like Luka Jovic. Almost ruined that one there. So there we come to the end of our fantastic team. Where do you think these guys could finish in the Champions League? I've said at least semi-final. Maybe they can even get to the final. This team is ridiculous. It's got pace and creativity in all the right areas and some solid defensive units too. And of course, a world-class goalkeeper. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section on this Benfica side, who you'd love us to take a look at next. And of course, you can click here or here to check out all of the other videos we've got going on Onefootball. But until next time, I will see you guys later.